How I became a gay male MRA. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I wanted to let everybody know that I am officially coming out of the closet as an MRA. I figure the time has finally come, and I have no reason to be ashamed or scared any longer. The Southern Poverty Law Center has not classified men's rights activists as a hate group, and it's time more people stopped being afraid to show support for the greater cause. You see, the oppositional forces to the rights and gender-specific issues of men and boys have shown themselves to have zero logical arguments, which is why they are so focused on censorship and blatant dishonesties about MRAs. And while I think they are losing the culture war anyway, more voices are always needed. So, before I explain how I became a gay MRA, I need to make it explicitly clear what I mean when I say that I'm an MRA. When I say that I am an MRA, personally, I mean that I am a men's rights advocate, not even necessarily an activist, because all I really do is advocate for the gender-specific issues of men and boys on my YouTube channel. That's all. It is an identity based around the factual representation of my actions. It is not necessarily a description of my personal philosophies. Similarly, I'd also consider myself a WRA, if you had to say it, because I advocate for the rights of women and girls when it comes up. I also want to make it abundantly clear that I am somebody that grew up with older sisters, no brothers, and a feminist-identified mother. I also had many female feminist friends basically my entire life, and I always assumed they were good people and that feminist philosophies were noble. I am not somebody with any sort of long-standing deep personal issues with women. Get that notion out of your head, because I know some of you are thinking it. That said, if I am now an MRA, every feminist would theoretically be technically an MRA if they were to actually advocate for equality. But anybody who knows anything about third and especially fourth wave feminism knows that they don't. We also know that the definition of the word feminism is flagrantly removed from the reality of the current feminist movement, as it is basically a useless word. It is possible to be an advocate for women and girls' rights without the word feminism, and I suggest people start doing so. And for the record, Meninism is not real at all, but was invented as satire to mock feminists, if you didn't know. So why did I take the red pill and go down the men's rights rabbit hole, even though I am a gay male that has tons of awesome female friends who consider themselves feminists and have for decades? Well, the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when feminists started not just colonizing, but eventually taking over and holding hostage various gay male-oriented spaces, both online but even in person. Namely, they took over radical fairy sanctuaries, which were land that were pioneered to be spaces that only allowed gay men on them, as well as some bars that were frequented mainly by gay men over 30, and often as old as in their 50s and 60s. So these are gay men that should have been respected, but feminists were taking over the spaces that were the places that they've probably been going for decades. I am about 35, and after spending my late 20s and early 30s largely in spaces catered to be for gay men, I had always experienced respect from the females who very occasionally mixed in that environment. They knew that this was a space not designed for them, and they respected the right for gay men to have spaces designed to be for us, the same way women frequently ask to have spaces for just women. However, by the end of 2014, it seemed that there were a number of women who didn't respect gay men's right to have our own spaces anymore. Apparently, they viewed that as a horribly offensive extension of patriarchal privilege, because they are delusional ideologues. They think that the whole world is made for men, including gay men, so why would we ever want spaces just to ourselves? We're so selfish. Basically, that's really what they think. I had a few encounters with some very off-putting, dishonest, and seemingly power-hungry feminists in a few different gay male spaces, and it was clear that something was going on in culture on a bigger scale, because these women did not have the least bit of respect for gay male spaces. That thing which is going on in culture is fourth-wave intersectional feminism, which is the root philosophy of the social justice warrior movement and things like Black Lives Matter. The women, or feminists, who invaded gay male spaces were passive-aggressively rude at best and downright malicious and bullying very frequently towards gay men in relation to us being men at all. This happened over and over, and I witnessed it. They created an environment where both myself and basically every gay guy I observed felt like we had to walk on eggshells out of fear of upsetting a female or trans person in spaces that were founded to be for gay men. Both radical fairy spaces and bars were now places that you had to worry about who could hear you casually call your gay male friend a cunt if he made a silly joke, because there would undoubtedly be a feminist ready to shame you and make you check your male privilege for your word choices if you said the word cunt or bitch or, God, so many different words. And if you dared call them out on their various male-shaming rhetoric or obvious examples of downright oppressive individual behaviors, you'd have 10 feminists ganging up on you, doing everything they could to get under your skin, hoping you would lose your cool, and the second you lost your cool, they'd tattle to somebody with authority and attempt to ban you from any given space. A space that was meant for you, the gay guy, and not them in the first place. Somewhere along the way, I ended up in a conversation with one of the queen lesbian feminists who routinely ban men from a certain gay male online forum left and right. She actually was pretty reasonable in our conversation, and so I asked her, in so many words, why she was so strongly tied to double standards in relation to what she would let gay men get away with in word choices or whatever, and what she would let queer women and trans people get away with. She explained that the reason that it was okay for women to be mean to men, even in gay male spaces, had to do with intersectionality. This was in the spring of 2015, and it was the first time I heard of the term intersectional feminism. Basically, she explained to me that since gay men are less oppressed on the intersectional feminist scale of simple arithmetic than queer women, it was permissible for women and trans people to attack gay men for our genders, in her opinion. She was not completely rude about it, and it almost seemed for a moment like the concept had some small bit of validity to me. And since intersectional feminism was the philosophy being used to now govern many gay male spaces, banishing gay men who don't adhere to it enough, I figured I needed to do some research on intersectional feminism. I had already read countless feminist blogs by 2015, but I continued to read everything I could related to intersectional feminism. And the more I read, the more illogical it sounded. Every step of the way, I was confronted with examples of authors who thought women unanimously have it worse than men in every situation, even though, as a gay guy, I know that simply isn't true. The most glaringly obvious example that every gay or even bisexual guy knows in relation to lesbians or bi women is that we are way more likely to get bashed than any cisgender queer female. Gay men unanimously grew up at least somewhat fearing for our safety for being gay, at the very least through high school, while we almost never heard of our lesbian friends getting beat up. So when women tell us that we have quote-unquote male privilege as if life unanimously favors us, any gay dude with half a brain should be immediately skeptical. However, this is not the case for some reason, and many gay men swallow the male privilege bullshit, as I found out. This is because many feminists go out of their way to find feminist explanations for why gay men get bashed, which generally is that feminists claim that all homophobia against gay men is rooted in misogyny, which is as if to say that every gay basher is only attacking gay men because they really wish they were beating up women instead. It's a stupid idea on face value if you really think about it, but more so, it denies that people hate gay men because they see us as degenerates who spread diseases, that they think we are pedophiles, that they think we would rape men if we had the chance, or that they think that we are sinners. No, feminists, you do not get to claim our problem, homophobia, is really just an extension of your problem, misogyny. That's fucked. Regardless, for a while, I was naive enough to believe that I could find the one unicorn of a current feminist that was writing fairly about the various male and female privileges one might encounter in life. But I just couldn't find that feminist blog. They seemingly just don't exist. Eventually, I found Blair White's video on female privilege, and it was like a gift from the cosmos. Not only was it a very femme-presenting woman explaining that she believes she herself has female privileges, but she is also LGBT, which spoke to me as an individual, as well as providing evidence that she has experiences on both sides of the fence as a trans woman. She was perceived as male. It had a certain set of pluses and minuses, pros and cons, and then she is now perceived as a woman, and that has its own benefits, which she talks about. I recommend her video on female privileges. It's quite good. Through Blair, I found Theron Meyer, and I began exploring more and more men's rights arguments from people like Karen Strawn, who became my favorite MRA speaker. I'm not sure if it's because I'm gay, but I really resonated with female men's rights advocates. My educational period went on very intensively for at least a month or two, and then a funny thing happened when I began sharing my findings about men's issues to my friend group on Facebook, which was a sudden and drastic demonization that I experienced from various feminists that I thought were my friends. These women, who were unanimously heterosexual white women for whatever that's worth, immediately shamed me and then blocked me on social media the second I showed any sign of having a well-developed understanding of the legitimate issues that men and boys are facing in the West. It was as if feminism was far more organized than I had ever anticipated prior to learning about male issues, and they had issued a list of warnings to feminists in regards to what to look for when a man was taking the red pill and waking up, and that they needed to excommunicate this man from their friend circles before he informed anybody else of his findings. Truthfully, I am now glad that those early 3 or 4 people that I thought were my friends overreacted so harshly to me sharing tidbits of information, because it made me realize very quickly that feminists absolutely did not and do not have the gender-specific issues of men and boys in mind when they approach their activism and advocacy, no matter what they say. Not even the issues of gay men are a concern to them, considering they were so eager to demonize me for simply mentioning male suicide rates or men and boys falling behind in every level of education. I continued investigating feminist theories as told by feminists, as well as feminist critics like Christina Hoff Sommers and Camille Paglia, and the numbers they cited from sources like the FBI reports made it obvious that current feminism basically has no basis in reality, unless of course you consider mansplaining, manspreading, trigger warnings, safe spaces, and freeing the nipple to be major issues of importance. Reproductive rights were the only issue that held any water, but hashtag shout your abortion seemed like a counterproductive way to get that message across to me. Still, I remained undercover as a hardcore feminist critic and MRA for many months, but it wasn't simply the fear of social rejection. Truthfully, I was acting as a double agent, quietly shuffling information to my more moderate friends, as well as testing the more feminist brainwashed people in my friend group to see how well informed they were about the issues of either men and boys, or women and girls for that matter. It was not surprising to find out that even the women I had assumed would be the most educated feminists in my friend circle knew almost nothing about male issues, aside from canned responses in regards to how to dismiss their importance when they are brought up. Like saying that male suicide being almost 5 times that of female suicide in the West is unimportant, because females supposedly attempt suicide more often than males. So even though we know that men succeed and are actually killing themselves at almost 5 times the rate of women, Well, it doesn't really matter to feminists, because, according to them, if women were just better at killing themselves, the numbers would even out. Dumb argument, and super callous in regards to their appreciation of male life. But I still stayed super undercover for months. You see, for a long time, I was still in the phase of trying to make sure I was aware of the arguments as well as knowing my enemies, which I considered both feminists and MRAs at that point, because truthfully, I hadn't really seen any gay male MRAs, and a lot of people associated with the movement did not seem like people I was socially compatible with. Finally, I made my YouTube channel and really started making videos around July of 2016, and I quickly met a number of super nice people who shared my feelings on so many of these issues. Many of them were gay, or trans, or black, or Asian, or what have you. After getting to know more people from YouTube, I did not feel like people who pay attention to men's issues were just some straight guy club of jerks. And I was actually a lot happier talking to people who were feminist critics, MRAs, or full-blown anti-feminists. Even though a lot of them are straight guys, but they're really nice. They're totally nice to me. I realized soon after that I was technically a men's rights advocate because my videos were getting more and more views and I was advocating for the rights of men and boys. So if I was to deny that I was an MRA, that would be silly. Then, as basically an encore to my personal journey to men's rights, the election happened and Hillary Clinton showed that she represented basically everything about current fourth wave intersectional feminism that needed to be shown, in the way that she was only semi-decent at making it sound like she cares about the rights of individuals by making emotional appeals to the struggles of groups. But more so, Clinton was mostly really good at being corrupt and seeking authoritarian power for herself and other female politicians, just like feminists seem to, in general. I was glad that she lost, even though I have never liked Trump and was actually a Sanders supporter. And while I hoped feminism would maybe die a quick death now that the head vampire Hillary Clinton's head had been cut off, that was a naive, childish fantasy of mine to believe. In reality, now that Donald Trump is our president, many women have begun holding stronger onto their feminist beliefs because they think Trump is just a sign that the white male patriarchy is still incredibly powerful and is attempting to dominate all women all the time, to favor all men all the time, ignoring the fact that Trump is attempting to protect women from the truly patriarchal influence of Islam, which they seem to want no protection from. And so, knowing that feminists absolutely will not allow for legitimate, honest, and productive discussions of the issues of men and boys, I figured I needed to make it official that I am a men and boys' rights advocate, or an MRA, and that I think feminists are delusional and have it all wrong in the way they see the West. Feminists are extremely entitled and usually completely spoiled and mediocre people who think that the world owes women and girls something by virtue of the fact that they are female, even though they already have so much. They even want entitlements that they receive at the expense of the male half of the population, including gay men, as I experienced myself. Considering I have been studying male and female issues basically full-time for over a year and a half, and the only issues I have found that women and girls still even seem to face legally are birth control and freeing the nipple, I honestly think feminism is almost entirely useless in the West. Yes, women still get beat up and raped, but women will always get beat up and raped. Not to mention all the crap that happens to men and boys, which actually happens a lot more often. And no, the cure is not getting rid of all men and boys. And good luck trying to do that by shaming people on the internet, which is basically all fourth wave feminists do anyway. Eradicating the male gender by attacking video game players and saying they have toxic masculinity because they like to shoot things up in a virtual space just doesn't really work, apparently. Now Trump's our president. Get the fuck over yourself. That all said, if you want to advocate for women and girls' rights, I really am fine with that. But I certainly hope you put your money where your mouth is for human rights and advocate for the rights of men and boys too. Honestly, in the West, there's a lot more problems that men and boys are facing that are going ignored. Men and boys suffer many untreated mental health problems, gender specific diseases that are underfunded in research. Men suffer the vast majority of workplace injury and fatalities, longer sentencing for the same crimes, and a higher likelihood to be wrongfully convicted, lack of help in domestic violence situations, horrible treatment in family courts, and many, many other issues. So, again, I am Prince of Queens, and I am an MRA. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.